Welcome into No Boundaries here on Sky Sport, a Cricket World Cup special. Great to have you with us. I'm Jeff McTaich, and joining me as always, Mitch McClenaghan, and also Mike Hesson down in the greatest city in New Zealand, Dunedin. Good to see you both, gents. New Zealand on the board. Mitch, we'll start with you. 9-wicket win over Uganda, rolling the for 40 bowling first and a pretty easy chase in the end. Good to see.
Yeah, great to see. Nice to see them get a win on the board in this tournament, albeit a little bit too late. But I thought the opening pair of Boult and Southee were class. They hit their areas. There was a lot of swing about, which was really interesting because that's going to be one of the semi-final locations as the tournament unfolds. So there was a lot of movement, the most that we've seen at any of the grounds so far throughout this tournament. And didn't they execute well? I thought both Southee and Boult could have had a hat-trick in this game, and Uganda just weren't up to the mark, were they? That's unfortunately for them, they created a record tonight. They're the first team to be bowled out for less than 50 twice in a T20 World Cup tournament.
Yes, what did you make of it? Obviously, there's a lot swirling around the Black Caps camp after those first couple of defeats, not advancing in the tournament. They had a lot to prove. They had to come out and be professional. What was your take on the game?
Yeah, I think that's a good term. I think professional is exactly what you wanted to see from this Black Caps outfit, and they were. You know, as Mitch said, there was plenty of swing on offer, which supports, you know, the lineup of Boult and Southee, and it became a little bit like a test match in terms of Uganda trying to survive rather than trying to look to attack, which normally happens in T20. So New Zealand were very well equipped to that, and from a bowling perspective, you know, they were exceptional throughout. Obviously, spinners came in. There was plenty of offer for the spinners as well, and with it being a fresh pitch, probably a good toss to win as well. I don't think it would have made a difference in terms of the outcome of the match, but it allowed us to see the best of Boult and Southee.
Let's focus on that a bit more, Mitch. Obviously, small margins in the game, and on any other given day, New Zealand might have had a better result in their first two matches. But Uganda in dire straits, Boult and Southee, the Sultans of Swing, they hit their straps. What was so impressive about their performance?
Oh, just the movement, the accuracy, and what they've learned from the first couple of games. Southee spoke after the game about making sure in those conditions, the conditions they've been up against in the first two games as well, just to keep the stumps in play, because there has been some variable bounce. There's been a little bit of movement off the seam, and there was some swing tonight. So they're seasoned campaigners, aren't they? They know how to go about their work, and I think when you look back at this campaign, I don't think we can fault the bowling. I think the bowling unit has been pretty good on a whole, maybe one or two overs here, a couple of deliveries. But outside of that, I thought they performed very well.
Yes, on the batting side of things, it wasn't many to chase, all due respect to Uganda. But I suppose Finn Allen is a player we could have a look at here. Missed out again on some runs, hasn't had the greatest tournament. But what do you think the issue is with Finn at the moment, Hess?
Well, I just think he's short of cricket, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he's scrapping hard. The wickets aren't great. You know, to get any fluency on, they're pretty challenging. And his role is to go out and try and attack. So, I mean, he found that difficult. He did it okay in the second game against the West Indies, but wasn't able to kick on, and he'll be frustrated about that. But it's really difficult when you've got, you know, two or three guys in your lineup that are sort of battling for form. But to be fair, the Black Caps have probably got more than that. And that makes it difficult to start the tournament, you know, strong. And to be fair, they probably would have benefited from a couple of these games early on, just to get a little bit of confidence, maybe get a score under your belt, maybe even bat first in one of them, get a little bit of rhythm, and then move on. But it just wasn't to be. And as we've said before, the batting lineup just never really got into the tournament.
What Hess just touched on there, Mitch, is that the issue here for the Black Caps in general, is that they were just maybe a bit short on cricket, the side that was against Pakistan, probably not up to full strength, and guys sitting on the bench in the IPL as well. Maybe they could have done things slightly differently in terms of preparation.
Well, definitely. They would have liked to have a couple of warm-up games. It sounds like they maybe caught on the hop with the rules of the tournament, that you couldn't actually have warm-up games after the tournament had started, so they would have had to get there before the tournament. And as well, like, a lot of these players haven't played in the Caribbean, so the conditions are completely different. And touching on what Hess was saying, like about Finn Allen, he is a striker of the ball, and why he's so successful in New Zealand on our smaller grounds is that our wickets are very flat. And they're very consistent, and you don't get that variable bounce or that seam movement. And next time you go and watch Finn Allen play, the way he sets up, he stays alongside the ball, and quite often he's backing his hand-eye coordination to be able to strike the ball. So if you get any of that late movement, watch his technique next time you watch him play. There is a big gap between bat and pad, more often than not, and that's why he's struggled in conditions like this historically.
Devon Conway, yes, more time in the middle for him. Some nice cover drives. Is he starting to rekindle some of that form just simply by having some more time on the wicket?
Oh, look, I really hope so. I mean, he's such an important member of this New Zealand side, moving forward. And I really feel for Dev. He hasn't been in great touch for a while. And, it's quite tough to watch. So today to see some of those fluent drives, a bit more balance when the ball's on his pads, then you start to see the real Devon Conway. So, look, as I said, he's been really battling since the first game of the 50 over World Cup, really, where he got a tremendous 100. And he just hasn't found his feet since then. So hopefully today will be a catalyst for things to come.
Ish Sodhi missed out again on selection, Mitch, but Russian Ravindra obviously showed that he can do the job with Santner there. Are you surprised they didn't give Ish a crack in this game?
Yeah, I am. I am very surprised that we didn't see him in the last game or even in that first game. I think he's been an asset for New Zealand over a long period of time. He's a genuine wicket taker. He's played in the Caribbean. He knows the conditions, and we've seen even in the game tonight, South Africa against Nepal, there are conditions in the Caribbean that it turns prodigiously, and you need to be able to use those types of bowlers like Ish Sodhi to get the most out of the surfaces.
What do you reckon, Hess?
Yeah, look, I mean, going to this tournament, Ish Sodhi and Mitch Santner, I thought would be the trump cards for New Zealand, and because they've done so well over the last few years in T20 cricket in particular. Mitch Santner's done it in other forms, but Ish is he's a specialist. His T20 record is exceptional. He plays now and is well sought after all around the world. So, look, I was surprised. I guess it's because the wickets haven't been great, New Zealand's had to make a decision around probably stacking their batting a little bit, and by bringing Rutchin in to allow Santner to bat at 8, they would have had to have Santner at 7 and Ish at 8, and they probably didn't want that. They probably thought with it maybe being low scoring, they'd have to make a decision between a Lockie Ferguson or an Ish Sodhi. So, both attacking bowlers, and I guess they've gone for Lockie in that instance.
Stay with us here on No Boundaries, more after the break on Sky Sport. Welcome back to No Boundaries. We're unpacking the Black Caps' latest results against Guyana. Beg your pardon, Guyana, Uganda. God, I've got Guyana in my brain about the pitch. Sorry. Welcome back to No Boundaries here on Sky Sport. We are unpacking the Black Caps' latest result against Uganda and taking a look at the rest of the tournament as we head toward the business end of the T20 Cricket World Cup. Mitch McLean, Mike Hesson with me again as always. Lads, let's focus on the pitches now. Now, there's been a lot of criticism aimed at them. Mitch, we know Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, they're going to be the venues for the semi-finals. As far as you're concerned, are they up to semi-final standard?
Well, I thought the wicket we saw tonight was a lot better than the wicket we saw West Indies versus New Zealand the other night. Obviously been a little bit of weather around pre that match, so I think there was an improved wicket tonight. But what we've seen is what the Caribbean is. This is what the Caribbean is. There's no real great wickets in the Caribbean, so they knew that going into this World Cup, setting it up here, and we're getting exactly what you get when you go to the Caribbean, so it's not a shock. The only real great wicket in the Caribbean is St Lucia, and lo and behold, the West Indies get to play Afghanistan on an absolute road where their spinners won't come into play, and New Zealand got stuck with them in Guyana.
What have you made of the decks, Hess? Again, plenty of criticism aimed at some of them, but like Mitch has just said, you got to play with the cards you're dealt, right? No matter where you're playing in the world.
Well, I mean, we've just come from a 50 over World Cup in India where all the wickets were flat, and it was an incredibly high scoring affair, and there's not a huge amount of complaints about that. And then, as Mitch quite rightly said, there's no surprises here. Guyana's been rubbish for a long time. Trinidad is it does all sorts. Sometimes it's up and down. It definitely swings. It's challenging. And I mean, when you come to a World Cup, your best sides will still be your best sides. They will have the skill to be able to adapt. They'll have within their squad of 15. They'll have the ability to play 3 spinners if you have to, or to stack your side with seam bowling options if conditions allow, like we saw tonight. So, look, I don't mind it, to be honest. I don't think you want every World Cup to be like this. But I think that whoever wins this tournament will show that they have the versatility to be able to adapt to all conditions. And personally, I don't mind that.
From a spectator's point of view, Mitch, some would say, well, it's actually a good thing because it's allowing the associate nations to have a real crack at these full member nations. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You've only got to look at the results. You see USA getting up over Pakistan, who you wouldn't expect them to get up over Pakistan, but the conditions did bring them a lot closer, and we've seen that throughout. We saw Nepal tonight almost get up over South Africa. That would have been an amazing feat for them and kept them right in the running for the top 8 as well. So it has brought them closer. It's almost had to make some of these top-tier nations rethink the way they want to play T20 cricket, analyse their technique, how they're going to get through those periods, and try and look at targeting, say, 4 or 5 balls or one particular over to try and get their team ahead of the game. So it's been a fascinating World Cup for mine. I agree with Hess in terms of the top teams will rise to the top. I think England are starting to look dangerous. I think they'll absolutely smoke Namibia tomorrow night. They will.
Said it.
Oh, well, they will.
Smoke. What does smoke look like?
Smoke, well, probably the same as they did to Oman.
Okay.
The problem is that for England, anyone coming up against England, now Jofra and Mark Wood are back in good form, and then you've got the guy out the back, Adil Rashid, who just seems to step up in big moments. So I think they're coming together nicely with Australia.
So he reckons they're going to smoke Namibia, but as we've talked about, we've seen some low-scoring games. The pitch is doing funny things. Do you think they'll be smoked? Do you think Australia, Scotland, is that a walk in a park? Or like we've seen and discussed with these wickets, the games could be a lot closer than people might think?
Look, I think until you see the surface, I think if it's a good surface, Mitch is spot on. But I think if it's not a great surface, then it might bring conditions a little bit closer. Probably more Scotland than against Australia than I think England. I think England will be far too good for Namibia. And as you said, they've got airspeed with Archer and Wood, and they've got a great wrist spinner who just takes wickets for fun. So England's probably needed that little wake-up call early on in the tournament against Australia, but they've got firepower throughout their side, so they will be there come the back end of the tournament. For me, it's just going back to those surfaces, Jeff. I think it's actually about dropping your ego a little bit. In terms of not trying to go too hard too soon on some of these surfaces, but because even though you should be able to do what New Zealand did to Uganda tonight, it doesn't actually always work like that. And sometimes, as I said, you need to leave your ego at the door and just assess conditions and play accordingly and play well enough to win.
But something Hess touched on before, which I found interesting, is that the Black Caps, they knew what they were coming to at this Cricket World Cup. Guys have played in these conditions before, so we've talked about their lack of preparation, perhaps a few other things there as well. So having said that, did it surprise you with maybe how underprepared they were, or maybe the strategy that they came in with? And would you have done things a bit differently?
Oh, I definitely would have been there before the tournament. Absolutely. If that's when the only time that you could play warm-up games, I definitely would have been there before the tournament. Just like Australia were, they played their warm-up games with a few less players. They had their staff on the field, which would have been interesting. Jacob Oram back out there in Black Caps uniform, and Gary Stead maybe slot himself into slip. But yeah, they missed a trick there. So first and foremost, that's what you need to do, particularly knowing that you've got some guys who are coming out from a long period of time without playing cricket. Finn Allen missed that tour with a back injury to Pakistan. Conway obviously ruled out of the IPL with a hand injury. So that your openers, who you're expecting to score a bulk of your runs in these conditions, hadn't had the game time, hadn't had good preparation, and that's probably where we've faltered.
He's putting your coach's hat on. Would you have made some changes or done things perhaps a bit differently heading into those first couple of games?
Oh, look, I don't want to keep putting the boot in, Jeff, because I've probably done it since the start of the tournament or even leading up to it. It's kind of a difficult one. Like absolutely, Mitch is absolutely spot on. And I think it showed that, we're basically out of the tournament before we've even started, to be fair. And that's something that, on reflection, I'm sure it's not simple. It's not a simple thing of just booking your flight a couple of days earlier because you're coming from all over the world, but it needs to be done. And even if you had to play with 7 players, and all 7 of those are going to be part of your lineup, then you've got to make it happen. So, something that they'll certainly look at, and I'm sure they won't do that again.
OK, we'll get the predictions off the lads after the break in part 3, and also look ahead to the Black Caps' next game against Papua New Guinea here on No Boundaries. Welcome back to No Boundaries here on Sky Sport. Great to have you with us. Right, we're looking ahead to the Black Caps' final match of the T20 Cricket World Cup. Now, Papua New Guinea, Mitch, same venue, more of what we saw today?
I'd imagine so. Even though PNG went down to Uganda the other day, I actually think they're probably a stronger side, particularly with the bat. I think they're stronger with the bat. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of resistance they put up against the Black Caps. And I don't think that the Black Caps will actually change their side. If they were going to change their side, they would have changed it tonight. And I think this is how they're going to roll through to the end of the tournament.
Is it a good opportunity though, Hess, final game to maybe roll the dice and try a few things? They know they're on a plane after that, heading home. So is it a chance for Gary Stead to make a few tweaks and just change up the dynamic?
I don't think so. I think you've got one more game in the World Cup. It's not like a huge amount can be achieved other than, once again, being really professional like New Zealand were tonight. The roles that people are playing, it's not like you're going to manoeuvre them around too much and open with somebody different. I mean, they've prepared for this tournament with the specific roles they've got. Conway's started to get a little bit of rhythm. Finn Allen 2 games ago looked probably the best of the batters. So I don't think they're going to change much with the bat. And clearly the bowling, as Mitch has alluded to, has been, all in all pretty damn good throughout this World Cup. So I don't think they'll look to make any changes.
Let's talk about what they take from this, guys. Obviously, I think since 2015, the Black Caps have made 6 successive World Cup or major tournament business end semi-finals. So what do they learn from this experience?
I think first and foremost, exactly what you touched on. We've been so good for such a long period of time, and without having that win that we would have loved, I think potentially when you are so successful and you're always making the semi-finals, sometimes just in your preparation you could just slip up. Just take the foot off the throat just a little bit, and maybe not turn over that extra stone that you need to. So maybe this is a really good reminder to them that they need to make sure that they go into each tournament with the respect that they need to give each opposition and each tournament that they're going into, and make sure they're prepared properly. So look, I think that's what they'll learn from this. I think the Champions Trophy, where you're probably going to see a lot of these guys resurface to play that Pakistan tournament that's going to be in February, I think they will learn a lot from this, and I think we'll see them go over there and perform. And it might be the last opportunity we see in an ICC World Cup tournament or World Tournament and the Champions Trophy of some of our greatest players of New Zealand history ever played together again.
Yeah, well said, Mitch. Hess, on that, do you think that when they come home that there will be some hard truth and maybe we do see some significant changes from Gary and the coaching staff?
I think no doubt there'll be a decent review, and there absolutely there should be. Look, I think New Zealand showed with that tour to Pakistan that they do have depth. They do have a number of exciting prospects. You think of Will O'Rourke, you think of Ben Sears. From a batting point of view, there's Mark Chapman has done really well when he's been near the top of the order, but batting near the bottom is much harder. So you've got guys that potentially could step in and fulfil some roles. And Gary, I'm sure, will be looking at that and going, well, when's the right time? When is the time that we look to give them the preferred position or more opportunities in these big events? And look, there will be some good reflection from this. You can't take anything for granted. And I'm not suggesting that we did, but sometimes, you will reflect and go, look, hey, did we make the right decisions for the right reasons? And I think that needs to happen because we didn't start this tournament well, and we're the Black Caps will be the first to admit that, and it was their own performance. It wasn't the fact that Afghanistan were outstanding; they were very good. But when you look at your own performance, you go, "Hey, we actually anywhere near as good as we could be."
Righto, gents. Predictions. Time for some predictions. There's going to be some people watching it. They want to put these in their multis for sure. So, putting it on the line, Mitch, who do you see as the firm favourite at this stage to take out the tournament?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think India's probably had the worst conditions, but been able to manage that. And a few of their players, the big-time players, who they're probably going to need to rely on, the Rishabh Pants, Surya Kumar Yadavs, Hardik Pandya is back in form now as well, and Arshdeep's bowling very nicely. So they're starting to come together, but I think Australia's looked the best. Without a doubt, I think all of their performances have been polished, particularly that one against England. They adapted to the conditions beautifully, which means that they've got really good captaincy, good leadership. They obviously have a very good support staff who communicate well. So I thought that was significant, and that kind of edges them over India for me.
What is it for you, Hes? Is it the Aussies?
I'm going to say no, just because I'm going to be different.
Oh, that must have felt good.
I think that South Africa would have, they'll be a little bit embarrassed by their performance against Nepal. They've had some terrible conditions that they've played on as well. And they've actually got a batting lineup that if you get them in a surface that's pretty good, they're destructive. I think someone like Quinton de Kock come the back end of the tournament could front up. So it's been a long time from South Africa's perspective. The perennial sort of underachievers, and I'm thinking that come the end of this World Cup, they could well be near the top, and I think India will be there or thereabouts as well.
Hey, just quickly before we go, guys, Hess, I know you talked about this in the past, this particular tournament, where it's being staged and how good that is for growing the game. You're sure Black Caps fans will be disappointed. I'll start with you, Mitch, on that. How good has this tournament been for growing the sport of cricket in this part of the world?
Oh, it's been brilliant. It's been awesome. I don't know, some of the social media sites that I know a lot of people follow have been talking about US cricket. And they're big basketball sites, big NFL sites, and they're starting to get on the map. And that's such a huge market for cricket and for sport. So that's significant. So that's the goal that they wanted to achieve. They wanted to make sure they expanded the eyeballs on cricket, and they've definitely done that. We saw it. We listened to the Uganda skipper tonight as well, talk about how many people are staying up through the night and cheering them on, regardless of how they performed. So it's just got eyeballs all around the world that we probably didn't even think they were there. And I think it's grown immensely.
We know it's massive, Hess, but the US market, as Mitch has alluded to, it's a key market. You can crack that. It just goes to another level, right?
Yeah, you can always capture the Asian market in the US, and that's massive as it is. But to catch a lot of the locals that have never even thought about cricket, they've been baseball fans or whatever, to, as you said, to check in on the social media, to start to support their team. There was a time there where USA were actually top of the table. And they had India and Pakistan in there, and there's no doubt there's a few US-based people going, wow, how good is this? We're obviously good at cricket. And I think just that first game against Canada, it sort of captivated, all those watching. It was actually a really great start to the tournament. Obviously two traditional rivals in many sports, but the fact that USA played so well, Jones came out, did what he did, and then obviously the game against Pakistan would have captivated everybody. So it's exciting. And hey, I wouldn't be surprised if they run another side close in the Super 8s, if conditions aren't flat.
Yeah, I'd just touch on an example of how much it has grown in the US. A guy, Reuben Clinton, who's with Auckland, he's going over to play MLC, and he keeps on getting messages from his mates who are in the US and saying that their little brothers at school and the whole classroom's watching the USA play against India, and it's actually gone down to that level. And that's what started it for all of us, right? It was waking up watching World Cups or watching the Olympics or watching the All Blacks. So, it's great to see that it's penetrated into the schools over there as well.
That's awesome. Mitch, Hess, as always, thanks for coming in and joining us here on No Boundaries. That is us for another episode. We'll catch you on Tuesday where the Black Caps play their final game of the tournament against Papua New Guinea. Take care.